102. My name is Kelsey, and I will be giving you a presentation on the rights of women by Anna Barbald today. Anna Barbald, 1743-1825. So, who exactly was Anna Barbald? She was a British writer, poet, and editor, and also considered an activist. She was born to her father John and her mother Jane. And then she also did have a brother who was also named John, and he was 4 years younger than her. She was also the only daughter of John, and her father was considered a dissenter, which has some religious meanings, and he just did not really agree with the British government trying to have a say in what kind of education they were willing to give. Anna lived with her father in Warrington, and her father taught at a Protestant academy. And it was there that Anna would go on to be encouraged by her father's friends and associates to consider educating herself further. Now, back then, that was very rare. But again, this is a man who is a dissenter with his dissenter friends. So they are very much for education. Her family background led to political movements in her era. Um, her friends and family were definitely also considered activists at the time as well. So her first published work shows up in 1773, Corsia an Ode. This is an ode to a Caribbean island that fought for independence from France. They ended up winning the independence from France for a year, and then they excuse me, ended up going back under French rule. So Anna and her colleagues were very fascinated with what was going on across the sea. She would go on to collaborate with her brother John on miscellaneous pieces in prose, which was also published in 1773. Both of these pieces were well received by the public, even though women authors were rare at the time. But a lot of women authors would be publishing underneath their brother or father's name. So May 26, 1774, she ended up marrying Rochmont Barbald. Rochmont was a dissenter priest as well. So she does definitely have a type of person she is trying to situate herself with and surround herself with. They didn't end they did not end up having biological children. That was because on the Barbald lineage, they had some very heavy mental illnesses, and they both agreed not to pass that down genetically. Now, although they did not have blood-related children, they did have adopted children that they ended up adopting from Anna's brother John. Rochmont and Anna would also go on to found their own academy in Suffolk called the Palgrave School. This would be a very, very successful school, and Anna would be invited to serve on the board of a different school by a activist friend. But Anna ended up turning that down because she ironically did not believe in women's education. She did not think that women should be uh, perceived as educational as men. So in 1778, she would go on to publish Lessons for Children, which did change the direction of children's literature. And then she also, in 1781, published the Hymns for Prose for Children. And then this would be going on to go to be very popular. It would be published in North America and also be published in multiple different languages. In 1786, her husband did begin to display heavy symptoms of mental illness. They would move to France for a year, and then they did end up coming back to Britain and settling down. So in 1790, she ended up publishing an address to the oppressors and the repeal of the Corporation and Test Acts. Her later works are heavily, heavily political. In 1791, she published the Epistle to William Wilberforce. So this is just an ode to a fellow activist. And then she spoke out against England's renewal of hostilities with France in 1793, and she published Sins of Government, Sins of Nation. This was also well received by the public, generally speaking. In January of 1808, her husband ended up coming after her with a knife, trying to kill her. 2 months after that, they ended up separated. Her husband would be discovered dead on November 11th, 1808, in the New River. He was found to be bribing his attendants with money to leave him alone so he could walk around alone. So he probably ended up having a mental illness fit and drowning. January of 1812, one of Anna Barbauld's most notable poems appeared 1811, and this was not well received by the public at all. People ended up actually like sending her hate mail, and a family friend, a longtime family friend, ended up posting an anonymous, basically like hate letter about this poem, and he would eventually come to own up to that. Um, so the poem's connections to society, it was written in 1792. Britain was going through some political reform on the slave trade at the time. Anna Barbald did speak up against that and was opposed to slavery. Thomas Paine was also going on trial for treason surrounding the American Revolution. And then the French Revolution was also happening. And then this did spark Britain's interest in women's rights. This poem is still relevant to society today, as women's rights across the world are not equal. Okay. Obviously, Anna Barbald is not here to share this poem with us, so we are going to listen to Dee Dee say this poem.
Barbald, read for LibriVox.org by Dee Dee Robertson. Yes, injured woman, rise, assert thy right. Woman, too long degraded, scorned, oppressed, O born to rule in partial laws despite, resume thy native empire o'er the breast. Go forth arrayed in panoply divine, that angel pureness which admits no stain. Go, bid proud man his boasted rule resign, and kiss the golden scepter of thy reign. Go, gird thyself with grace, collect thy store of bright artillery glancing from afar, soft melting tones thy thundering cannons roar, blushes and fears thy magazine of war. Thy rights are empire, urge no meaner claim, felt, not defined, and if debated, lost, like sacred mysteries, which withheld from fame, shunning discussion, are revered the most. Try all that wit and art suggest to bend, of thy imperial foe the stubborn knee, make treacherous man thy subject, not thy friend. Thou mayst command, but never canst be free. Awe the licentious and restrain the rude, soften the sullen, clear the cloudy brow. Be, more than prince's gifts, thy favors sued, she hazards all who will the least allow. But hope not, courted idol of mankind, on this proud eminence secure to stay. Subduing and subdued, thou soon shalt find thy coldness soften, and thy pride give way. Then, abandon each ambitious thought. Conquest or rule thy heart shall feebly move. In nature's school, by her soft maxims taught, that separate rights are lost in mutual love.
End of poem.
End of poem. This reading is in the public domain.
Oh, okay. All right. Now it's time for us to analyze the poem. Now my poem was 8 stanzas long, so I am analyzing it stanza by stanza instead of line by line because we would be here for a while. This first stanza reads, yes, injured woman, rise, assert thy right. My bad. The rise, assert thy right sets the tone off almost at 100%. It is the narrator asking for a physical reaction to what they're saying. Woman, too long degraded, scorned, oppressed. The author is just pointing out the social injustices that have happened to women, basically using this to add fire to the flame. O born to rule impartial law despite. The narrator is telling women to take control of their emotions and apply that to the positions provided by their marriage. And then resume thy native empire over the breast. This is just a reference to your heart because it's typically over your breast. Second stanza, go forth arrayed in Penelope divine. I did not know what the word Penelope meant. It's just a complete suit of armor. That angel pureness which admits no stain, this narrator is using a comparison to show the stereotype of viewing a woman as sweet and innocent with the innocence of an angel. Go, bid proud man his boasted rule resign. The narrator is encouraging a confrontation to happen with men regarding their seat in the hierarchy in terms of being above women. And kiss the golden scepter of thy reign. Um, so scepters are just another like representation of monarchy. This is inferring that women should take their own scepters and start their own reign of their own life. Go, gird thyself with grace, collect thy store. The narrator is using general stereotypes again for comparison. Women are considered graceful. Oh, bright artillery glancing from afar. The artillery referenced in this is going to be referring to the stereotypes being dropped throughout the poem, using these stereotypes as weapons to fool men. Soft melting tones, thy thundering cannons roar. The narrator is now using irony to display how powerful women can be regardless of how they're perceived. Blushes and fears, thy magazine of war. So a magazine is a storage for arms and ammunition, and this is telling women to save their emotions, their negative emotions, to be used later. We are on the fourth stanza now. Thy rights are empire, urge no meaner claim. The narrator is telling women that their rights are more important. Felt not defined, and if debated, lost. This is referring to women having less rights than men because men are the ones making the laws and having political discussions at the time. Like sacred mysteries, which withheld from fame, the narrator wants women to know that they should be speaking out and sharing their stories, or everything is going to be lost to time. Shunning discussions are revered the most. The shunning discussions are not shunning discussions at all. They're just the discussions women have with each other when men leave the room. On to our fifth stanza. Try all that wit and art suggest to bend. The narrator is suggesting that women use their intelligence and womanly wiles to trick men into bending the knee. And that is a reference a little bit in the second line of thy imperial foe, the stubborn knee. Imperial foe is just referencing being stubborn with bending the knee or pledging loyalty. Make treacherous man thy subject, not thy friend. The word treacherous being used is to elicit a response from the reader because this is a very strong usage of word. Thou mayest command, but never canst be free. The narrator is now using irony to show how entwined a woman's fate is with a man. She may have the option to take charge of her fate, but ultimately she will still wind up having to consider the man. The sixth stanza, awe the licentious and restrain the rude. I did not know what licentious at the time meant. It means promiscuous, and awe in this context just means to inspire. Soften the sullen, clear the cloudy brow. These first two lines are just using juxtaposition to show the expectations that come with being a woman. So soften the sullen, clear the cloudy brow, restrain the rude. As a woman, you're just expected to be able to emotionally handle the outburst of men. B, more than prince's gifts, thy favors sued. Favors in this context are tokens of love and friendship. She hazards all who the least allow. So the narrator is warning women that if they will be caught unaware if they aren't more cautious about the nature of men, but a prepared woman will never be caught in that situation. The seventh stanza, but hope not courted idol of mankind. On this proud eminence secure to stay. The narrator has now started to warn women, letting them know that men may need women to continue their legacy, but they should not hope to be anything but like essentially a broodmare. Subduing and subdued, thou shalt soon find. Again, the narrator is using juxtaposition to show that women can subdue the emotional needs of men, but men will subdue women in the way of equality. Thy coldness soften and thy pride give away. The narrator is explaining how emotions like love can cause the negative emotions surrounding women's rights to fade away, taking their fight away for rights. The eighth and final stanza, Then, abandon each ambitious thought. The narrator is talking about how love can make a woman abandon her own self-interest. Conquest or rule, thy heart shall feebly move. This line is just in reference to emotions again, just the narrator stating that a woman can either rule her emotions or let the emotions rule herself. In nature school, by her soft maxims taught. I did not know what a maxim was. A maxim is a moral rule or principle, and nature school is a reference to the relationships regarding men and women being natural, where the man is in charge and the woman is submissive. And then the final line, and almost most impactful, that separate rights are lost in mutual love. So this narrator is giving a final warning on how emotions like love can skew how self is perceived and how the individuality is being taken away if you are too much into a relationship. Now, we're on to poem pattern. The Rights of Woman is a ballad, so this follows a four-line stanza and is set up with a rhyme scheme of A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, and you get the point. This can be found in the lines Go forth arrayed in Penelope divine. That rhymes with the third line, Go bid proud man his boasted will resign. And then that second and the fourth line are going to rhyme, Thy angel pureness which emits no stain, and kiss the golden scepter of thy reign. The poem can also be considered a Sicilian Hortense because this also follows a four-line stanza setup and then has just a more specific rhyme scheme. The only difference between these guys is that the ballad could be set to music and then the Sicilian is not set to music, and this poem is in fact set to music. So it does meet both standards. There are a couple instances throughout the poem where the poem does not follow this rhyme scheme, but instead follows an I rhyme or a sight rhyme. And that could be found in stanza 4. The lines 2 and 4 follow this, and if debated, lost. And that follows are revered the most. They look like words that should rhyme, but they do not. And then this poem is written in iambic pentameter, so that pentameter, so that just means there's 5 iams are stressed syllables per line. The overall effect this has on the poem is it almost reads like a military speech. Themes found throughout the poem. These are just my interpretation of what I read. Feel free to interpret how you like. You can definitely disagree with how I interpreted. These are just my opinions. So I think that the main theme of the poem is that women should use negative stereotypes to empower themselves to stand up for their divine rights, regardless of that ruining relationships. And that is supported through stanzas 2, 3, and 5. It's just talking about their stereotypes. So we're circling back to the angel stereotype, and then the stereotype that women are soft and speak softly. And then this is just referencing make a treacherous man thy subject, not this friend. And then a couple other themes that I found that one of the themes was don't get oh goodness, don't get so consumed in your relationship that you lose all sense of individuality. This is followed by the warning in stanza 6, she hazards all who will the least allow. And then this is hammered home with the final line of the poem that separate rights are lost in mutual love. Another theme I found is that both negative and positive emotions can be all-consuming and affect how you view the world. This poem is filled with a lot of negative emotions and definitely impacts how the narrator views the world, especially a world ruled by men. This is presented in a lot of examples throughout the poem. Too long degraded, scorned, oppressed. Those are some heavy emotions right there. And then the narrator does not have kind words for men. She describes men as proud. She describes men as treacherous. And then she goes on to describe what emotions can do to you. Thy coldness soften and thy pride give away. She's referencing how love can make a person feel. Poetic devices found throughout this poem. Anna Barbald does use irony, and you can see that in the examples of the soft melting tones, thy thundering cannons roar. Obviously, soft melting tones are not equivalent to a thundering cannon's roar. And then we've got shunning discussions are revered the most. Shunning discussions, that is ironic because you should feel ashamed and you should never want to talk about that, but they are revered the most. Um, the poem is considered a ballad, and a ballad does tell a story a certain way. And then it does follow the rhyming pattern of A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, with the two exceptions of the sight rhyme found throughout the poem. Symbolism is also used throughout the poem, again, referencing back to that angel. That is a big symbol. And then the gird thyself with grace. Women are found to be typically graceful, and you're girding yourself, so they're using that as armor. And then just juxtaposition is used a lot to showcase like just how unfair and the double standard that women live. The mood and tone of the poem. The Rights of Women starts off with an upbeat, inspirational tone. The narrator calls for the reader to rise, assert thy right. That is just like a military speech, like I mentioned earlier. You're being called to rise. They want a physical reaction. It's almost a little bit upbeat. They want you empowered. As the poem progresses, a serious tone takes place, which is enhanced by the poetic devices used by Barbald. Uh, like with that, make treacherous man thy subject line. Treacherous is just a very strong word to be using. And then the final line of the poem makes the tone cautionary that separate rights are lost in mutual love. It's just a very, very cautionary line about falling in love and how emotions can impact your view on the world. Hmm. Sorry about that. Uh, Who is the narrator? I believe that the narrator is your late 1700s average woman letting other women know about her experience and her story. This poem is written in second person. Second person is not used a lot in writing. This point of view is used to address the reader specifically. It is used to be spoken like I'm speaking directly to you. The narrators use the word proud and then treacherous, and this just indicates a personal connection with the story. My personal reflection on this piece. So I picked this poem because I did feel very, very connected to Anna Barbauld's work and then just her personally. She had no problem speaking out against her own government, especially for being a woman in the late 1700s. I deeply admire and respect that. And then Barbald also passed away March 9th, and I was born March 9th. So when I found that out, I felt like this was meant to be. I made the right choice with my poem for my midterm project. And then my favorite line from the poem is try all that wit and art suggest to bend of thy imperial foe the stubborn knee. I just like the implications of men bending the knee to women. And then questions for the class. Would you interpret the meaning of the line that separate rights are lost in mutual love as something said out of anger or out of caution? And then after question number 2, after listening to the poem, do you think that the narrator wants other women to find happiness in their relationships with men? And then question 3, if you were a woman in the late 1700s, would you rise to the challenge of fighting for equal rights, or would you stay in your relationship being complacent? And these are my works cited. And thank you so much.